So I wanted to cover this motherboard before I start using it, like for water testing and also for LN2 overclocking. So some time ago, like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I managed to score a brand new, imagine it's actually in brand new condition, EVGA P55 Classified 200 motherboard from China. So this is the flagship motherboard from EVGA for the P55 LGA 1156 socket. It came out in 2009 and it's supposedly one of the best P55 motherboards for overclocking, especially for extreme overclocking. At least the top like Clarkdale validation results have been made on this motherboard. For some reason the old and legendary score made by Duck from Japan isn't actually posted on hwbot.org. So the highest frequency with the Core i5 655K is only like 7.14 GHz on hwbot, but based on the old video posted by EVGA on YouTube, the highest frequency achieved by Duck was like 7.3 on this very same motherboard. So yeah, I wanted to get one, and based on my like own thoughts, this is actually the most expensive legacy EVGA classified motherboard you can find today. It's very rare, it's very hard to find one of these boards, but it's actually pretty interesting. It's actually designed by Shamino, who now works at Asus since like 2011. It has many cool features that are not present on the other EVGA motherboards of that time, and even in today's standards it's pretty good. So the 200 stands for NF200 because back then CrossfireX and SLI was a huge thing. 4-way SLI was just about to come out to the market. EVGA actually invented 4-way SLI. So the first ever 4-way SLI system that was run was 4 BIOS modified GTX 285 classifieds. I'm not sure which board they used, but I would assume it was the EVGA X58 4-way SLI motherboard. So there was like a BIOS hack or something that the cards were recognized as GTX 295s, if I remember correctly. I actually have one GTX 285 over here, which is actually ruined. So I actually had to e-power that card because I didn't have means to flash an old enough EVBot firmware, so I couldn't use the EVBot whatever. So I actually ended up ruining that card, but it actually works, but it's not particularly good sample, so I haven't really bothered with that card since running it once on LN2. But yeah, so for the first generation Intel Core i7 and Core i5 processors, so that means like your Clarkdale and Linfield CPUs, like Core i7 860, 875K. I think there was 870 as well. Usually the lower end models like 600 series, 500 series, they are usually the Clarkdale models, and 700 to 800 series models, they are usually Linfield CPUs. There are some tricks you need to do if you want to run this board on LN2, like especially with the Clarkdale models. You need to do a modification, a physical modification on the motherboard to be able to run the Clarkdale CPUs very cold, like improve the cold boot bug as well as the cold bug temperature, and the gain can actually be pretty intense, like 50 degrees or so. It was very hard to find that trick now, since most of the images from those old forum posts are gone, and especially the Kimping Cooling forum has been down for many years already, but I managed to find it for this board, and I will be doing it after I do some initial testing on water cooling, as I have quite a few of those first gen CPUs I need to bin. If I have some that are decent enough on water cooling, I will be trying one of those CPUs on LN2, well, maybe today or tomorrow, we'll see. But I wanted to cover this board with you guys when I open it up for the first time, because yeah, it's pretty cool to see this board in late 2023, early 2024 in pretty much brand new condition. So I think the highest multi-GPU configuration this board supports is 3-way SLI and maybe 4-way CrossfireX, although the PCI Express layout is not very optimal for cards, even if you could run quad Crossfire. But of course you can do it with 2 dual GPU cards. So yeah, Intel P55 1156 socket. Let's look at the backside first before we open up this whole packaging. Yeah, 10-phase digital PWM, super low ESR, ESL film capacitor behind the CPU socket, so could be something like what Asus was using, the very famous Fujitsu capacitors, something like this, some form of protolizer cap anyways, but at least the ones EVGA usually used, they were much better like in terms of being faulty compared to the Fujitsu capacitors. So this does support the EVGA EVBUT, but I don't really want to use it with these old motherboards. There's actually a very usable E-lead software already for this board, and you can do a lot of like manual overclocking that way. So I'm pretty sure I will not be using the EVBUT with this board, but it does actually work. And then there should be the small like OC panel included in the box, what you can use for minor increments and like power and reset button, whatever. External CMOS button, whatever, firewire, E-lead tuner, high quality LICC caps, triple BIOS. So yeah, EVGA has been awesome BIOS wise for 15 years already. So even the old boards, they have 3 BIOSes, so it's pretty hard to brick the motherboard completely with corrupted or failure flashes, that way I mean. So yeah, this does actually have very unique feature that was never present on any EVGA classified motherboard, and it's the show volt feature. So this does actually have a physical voltmeter already included in the motherboard. It's obviously a very good question, is it very useful? But it's actually included. It's pretty much the same thing as a multimeter. You have to use a banana block like multimeter test lead to measure the voltages, so it's pretty much the same thing as a DMM. I don't know if back then in the normal BIOS environment, could you have implemented a feature that the LED or LCD over here would just show different voltages without measuring anything like physically, but it's very hard to say, like, is it only like possible to do in the more modern UEFI environment. But yeah, it supports the board, driver CD, SATA cables, power cables, 2-way, 3-way SLI, ECP2, which is the control panel, some stuff anyway. So yeah, so let's actually open up the packaging, because it's quite boring to just look at the backside for all the information. Okay, looks pretty neat. So that's the manual guide. We don't really need it, obviously. That's the board itself. This should be the control panel thing. I think it should connect to some of the like ports at the bottom side of the motherboard's PCB. Based on the thing I see, there should be VCore +1, -1, or VCore +1, VCore +1, VCore 0.1, or I mean VTT. So just very minor increments with on some of the main voltages, reset power, and I think that's clear CMOS button. Yeah, PCI Express disable jumpers and the same debug LED. So pretty handy, especially if you have like a multi-GPU configuration setup and you cannot access the onboard power and reset buttons, which can be actually pretty annoying. I found that very annoying with the EVGA 4-way SLI board. Like if you mounted 4 individual GPUs, the onboard buttons get covered by the last graphics card, and it's pretty annoying. I would assume this is either the 2-way SLI bridge or the CrossfireX bridge, whatever. Let's take the board out. We can obviously cover the remaining accessories very, very quickly for the sake of this video. Although covering accessories of a 14-year-old motherboard might not make that much sense to some of the viewers in 2023, but yeah, doesn't matter, because this is about legendary hardware anyway, so why not? I don't know what cable this is, need to check, but doesn't matter. Looks like almost like an IDE cable, but I'm pretty sure it's not that, but doesn't matter. This is the a voltmeter test lead you have to use with the show volt feature. So you just probe the different voltages from the test pads on the motherboard, and the value will be showed on the show volt display on the board. And I think this is the rear I/O. If you want to add some extra USB and Firewire port on the PCI Express slots on your case, you can use this, but most people don't use these kind of features, and they haven't really even existed on motherboards since like 2011, if I'm correct. So not really needed. And we have different power cables. I think these are like SATA Molex power cables. And we have the I/O shield. We have actually 2 individual 3-way SLI bridges, depending on your card layout. So with the normal 2-slot spacing and 2+3 slot spacing over here. Of course, I will not be running any multi-GPU configuration with this board. We have the driver CD. Oh, actually sad, so they don't have any like poster for your wall. Would be quite cool, because at least some of the graphics cards of that time did have some posters what you could put on the wall. But yeah, so to prove you that this is actually a brand new motherboard, you can see all the stickers in place on top of the CPU socket as well as on the memory slots. Pretty cool. Could never really imagine you could find a brand new motherboard that was released in late 2009, like new, unused in 2023. But yeah, so let's cover the main aspects I want to mention of this board now very quickly. So we have the multi-GPU layout option over here. I'm not sure what's the black PCI Express slot all about, but the NF200 chip should be underneath this heatsink over here. Back then in 2009, 2010, around those years, some people actually ran a dedicated PhysX card for 3D applications. So I don't know if this is actually meant for that kind of graphics card, but anyways, you could run like two-way SLI, two-way CrossfireX and three-way with these slots or with these slots. So up to three-way SLI. Not sure about the four-way CrossfireX, which I already mentioned at an earlier part of this video. So the south bridge should be the same as on the P45 775 platform, as well as on the X58, so the ICH10R. We have some supplementary power for the PCI Express slots over here. The audio part is over here. We have the onboard buttons on the bottom side, like I already said. So I can actually try to zoom you in. So we have the reset, power, clear CMOS, and we should have another clear CMOS button at the rear I/O. The BIOS switch is over here, so we have 3 BIOSes, 1, 2, 3. So I'll just keep it in the first position for now. We have multiple fan connectors. I think this is firewire. We have some USBs. So I think the debug LED is over here, and you can see the individual BIOSes over here. So we have the same layout as today with modern EVGA motherboards. So we have 1 BIOS chip over here which is removable, and 2 that are soldered on the board which you cannot remove without soldering. So it's a very idiot-proof design. So 3 BIOSes, and even one of them is removable. So if you manage to break all of them, you can buy a new one from sites like eBay, whatever. Not sure how easy it will be to flash the BIOS on this board. Like, does it work just fine from the BIOS, or do you need to do the same thing as on the Foxconn Blood Rage, like make a bootable USB and flash the BIOS in DOS environment? So that will be something I will figure out very soon. So yeah, so let's look at this side first, because or next I mean, because I want to mention something about this board or this part of the board. I would assume this is where you connect the control panel, but not fully sure, but it looks like that based on how it looks like. This area raises one very important question to me regarding overclocking. So we only have 6 SATA 2 ports running from the ICH10R Southbridge chipset. Now let's compare it. Maximus 3 Extreme from Asus, which is the flagship board from Asus for P55. It has also 6 SATA 2 ports from the Southbridge chipset, but it also has 2 additional SATA 3 ports from a third-party chip on the board. It's the same thing on X58 as well. But there's one important thing regarding base clock overclocking. I don't know if it's present on P55 as well, but at least on X58, to max out the base clock like completely, we have to overclock the PCI Express. Usually based on my testing on X58, the Intel based ports, so for example these, they can only run, let's say, 115 megahertz on the PCI Express, whereas the third party SATA 3 ports, they can run up to like 120, 125, 130, even 135 on the PCI Express, and it allows me to get quite a bit higher on the maximum base clock on the CPU. So that's something that really raises a question, because at least some of the lower end models like the i3 P5530, those are only base clock limited, and all of the top results are made on some lower end H55 chipset motherboard from Gigabyte. So that's something that could like lower the overclocking potential of this board, but at least with the higher end Linfield CPUs it shouldn't matter. So, well, that's at least something I assume, but I don't even know, does that PCI Express thing exist on the P55 platform, because I have never run this whole platform ever before. So if I run it tonight, it will be the first time ever for me to run any P55 system. But believe it or not, P55 is actually a pretty interesting platform, because you can run very interesting memory configurations. Even when the whole platform was released in like 2009, it's older than like Sandy Bridge P67, Z68. It's almost as old as X58, but it can run very interesting memory configurations, like even 2800, 2600, 2800 with different memory IC models like LPDA PBSC, PowerChip X series. You can run LPDA Hypers to some degree. You can even run probably even some newer DDR3 memory IC types. So the biggest debate for me will be which will be better, LPDA PBSC or PowerChip X series. When I look at the top results on hwbot.org, most people actually had pretty low, relatively low memory frequency for the actual top scores, but I remember seeing some very interesting memory demos back in the day on the P55 platform, so it will be interesting to see what kind of numbers we can see. So we have a PCI Express disable jumpers over here, the 24 pin, and here is the show volt feature. So you have to use the provided test lead on this metal plug over here, and then you just probe these test pads over here with the test lead, and it will show the actual voltage value on this display over here when the system is running. So like vCore, VTT, probably memory voltage, something like this. So it's actually pretty interesting. Yeah, maybe we could actually remove the stickers already. So those are pretty much the biggest features of the board. I don't actually know, do they have it mentioned, but I think on the packaging on the website they say the maximum official memory speed that's supported is 2600, but that obviously doesn't really mean anything. We have to test it out ourselves. This is actually pretty interesting VRM placement over here. So right next to the CPU socket there are two power phases. Don't know, those are probably not vCore, they could be something like the IMC voltage, the VTT, whatever, but for insulation it's kind of annoying location if you ask me. So we can actually take the CPU sticker out as well. So I think this uses a third-party CPU socket compared to the other like more mainstream design board. So it should be a load socket with higher like gold content inside the CPU socket. Like I think they advertise like 300% higher gold content inside the CPU socket, which should give you like better contact whatsoever, but probably in the real world situation it doesn't really mean much. And here we have two 8-pin CPU input power connectors. I actually ruined that one. I need to take it out with tweezers, but yeah, so this does actually use, I think it's the same Volterra 10-phase digital PWM what is being used on the EVGA GTX 285 Classified, and I think also on the X58 Classified. It's supposedly pretty good VRM design. When I asked about it from Tin, who used to work at EVGA for quite a long time. But what I found out with this VRM design is that it can run extremely high switching frequency, like 1333 kilohertz, and it makes the VRM very, very hot. So the VRM is probably pretty powerful for a motherboard of this age, but the VRM does really heat up a lot, so you should keep a very close eye on the VRM temperatures. Like, make sure you have good contact between the MOSFETs and the heatsink design, and have very adequate airflow directed towards the VRM heatsink, especially if you run those higher like switching frequencies. Otherwise it looks pretty simple. So this should be the ProLizer cap. Not sure if they have another one. They don't seem to have like another one behind the CPU socket, and yeah, this could be one of the first implementations of the so-called X socket. So we have dual mounting, so we have both LGA 115X and LGA 775 mounting holes. So back in the day you could easily recycle your old 775 CPU cooler and use it with this motherboard. Based on the information I found on the internet, the Clarkdale cold boot bug and cold bug modification should be over here. I will make a separate short video about it, but you need to actually short one of these resistors over here. So you can use like a wire, or you can just use solder across that resistor to make it 0 ohms, and it should work. So that should move, let's say, like the cold bug from -90 to -140, and the cold bug from -110 to -160. So it's something you have to do, but it usually shouldn't matter with the Linfield CPUs. So it should only impact the Clarkdale CPUs, but I will obviously do it before I do any XOC with this motherboard, just in case. But yeah, so the last thing will be the rear I/O. I want to show it to you guys before I wrap this whole thing for you. So yeah, we have a normal PS2 keyboard connector over here, 2 for 6 USB 2.0 ports, no USB 3.0 at all. I think it wasn't even available in 2009. We have another clear CMOS button, which I already mentioned, and here is the EVBot connector if you want to use it, but at least for me, generally, I didn't like to use the EVBot with the EVGA motherboards, only with the graphics cards like GTX 680, 580, and some of the newer graphics card models. And here we have I think we have, this should be, yeah, 2 eSATA ports, 1 Firewire, dual Ethernet, and your 7.1 audio. So that's pretty much it. So very happy that I managed to find this legendary motherboard from EVGA. So if you manage to find one on the second-hand market anywhere around the world, if the guy or the person who's selling the board is very knowledgeable about how valuable these components are, it's very easy to see a price tag of like 250, 300 euros, even much more for this kind of motherboard. I think I paid something like 250 to 300 with shipping. So the deal was definitely all right, especially considering as it's like brand new in the box. But I need to check, like, does it obviously work? It could be like dead on arrival, so anything can always happen when you buy used components from the internet. Otherwise, looks pretty interesting, so I will start binning the CPUs themselves. Let's hope for that we find a good one, like a Linfield CPU that can do like 4.5, 4.6, even 4.7 on water cooling in W prime, etc. That could be like decent enough to try it on LN2, the Clarkdale. I didn't actually check like what kind of numbers you are looking for based on water cooling for LN2. But yeah, if you like to see this very interesting motherboard model from EVGA from 2009, then please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Maybe check out my Patreon page as well if you want to support my work. And yeah, thanks for watching one of my videos once again, and I will see you on the next one.